These are the wealthiest people on the planet, and this is you. Somewhere between rent, groceries, and whatever is left at the end of the month, you find yourself scrolling through car listings at 2 a.m. Maybe it is a sleek BMW that caught your eye. Maybe a truck that would finally make you feel like you've arrived. Or perhaps it is just something reliable, something that does not break down every other month, something that does not embarrass you when you pull into the parking lot at work. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice whispers that you deserve this. You work hard, you show up every day, you have earned the right to drive something decent, and so you start calculating. Monthly payments, interest rates, trade-in value. You convince yourself the numbers work, you convince yourself this is a smart decision, and before you know it, you are sitting in a dealership, signing papers you barely understand, driving off in a vehicle that will quietly drain your financial future for the next 5 to 7 years. But here is the thing nobody told you. That car you just bought might be the single biggest financial mistake you will ever make. And the worst part is the entire system was designed to make sure you never realize it. Now let me be clear from the start. This is not another lecture about how you should stop buying lattes and avocado toast. This is not about shaming you for wanting nice things. The desire for a good car is not irrational. Transportation is a necessity in most of America. Public transit is a joke in all but a handful of cities. Your job might be 30 miles away. Your kids need to get to school. Life requires mobility, and mobility in this country means a car. The problem is not that you want a car. The problem is that you have been systematically taught to think about cars in exactly the wrong way by people who profit enormously from your confusion. It seems to you that a car is just a purchase, like a refrigerator or a couch. Something you need, something you buy. End of story. It seems to you that financing is just how normal people afford things. It seems to you that everyone does it this way, so it must be fine. It seems to you that the monthly payment is what matters, and it once seemed to me too. But as uncomfortable as this might be to hear, there is a reason you were never taught the truth about car buying, and that reason has nothing to do with your best interests. Let's start with some history, because nothing in the financial world exists by accident. In the early 20th century, something remarkable happened in America. A man named Henry Ford figured out how to mass-produce automobiles using assembly line techniques, and suddenly, for the first time in history, ordinary working people could afford to own a car. The Model T was not flashy. It was not luxurious. Ford famously said customers could have it in any colour they wanted, as long as it was black. But it was reliable, affordable, and it changed everything. By the 1920s, America was falling in love with the automobile, and an entire industry was being built around this new love affair. But here is where things get interesting. Ford believed in simplicity. He believed in making one product, making it well, and making it cheap. He kept the Model T largely unchanged for nearly 2 decades, because he saw no reason to fix what was not broken. But his competitors saw an opportunity. A man named Alfred Sloan, the head of General Motors, looked at Ford's success and asked a different question. What if we could get people to buy a new car not because their old one stopped working, but simply because they wanted something newer? And from this question, an entire philosophy was born. Sloan introduced the concept of the annual model year. Every year, General Motors would release new versions of their cars with slightly different styling, new colours, updated features. The mechanical differences were often minimal, but the psychological effect was profound. Suddenly, your perfectly functional 3-year-old car looked outdated. Your neighbour's new Chevrolet made your old one look shabby by comparison. Sloan understood something fundamental about human psychology. People do not just buy transportation, they buy status, they buy identity, they buy the feeling of being current, successful, modern. And if you could engineer a system that made people feel perpetually behind, perpetually in need of an upgrade, you could sell far more cars than if you simply waited for the old ones to wear out. This philosophy has a name. It is called planned obsolescence. And it was not invented by accident. It was designed deliberately by people who understood exactly how to manipulate your desires for their profit. But Sloan and General Motors were just getting started. You see, there was a problem with selling cars in America. In many cities, people did not actually need them. In the 1920s and 1930s, most major American cities had extensive streetcar systems. Electric trolleys crisscrossed Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Baltimore, and dozens of other urban centers. These systems were efficient, affordable, and widely used. If you lived in a city, you could get almost anywhere you needed to go without owning a car. And for the automobile industry, this was a serious obstacle. So in the 1930s, General Motors, along with Standard Oil, Firestone Tires, and a few other companies, formed a holding company called National City Lines. Over the next 2 decades, National City Lines systematically bought up streetcar systems in more than 40 American cities, and then, one by one, they dismantled them. The trolleys were replaced with buses that ran on gasoline, buses that were manufactured by General Motors, buses that wore tyres made by Firestone, buses that burned fuel refined by Standard Oil. But the buses were slower, less reliable, and less pleasant than the streetcars they replaced. Readership declined. Cities that had once been designed around public transit were now redesigned around the automobile. Highways were built, suburbs sprawled, and suddenly, owning a car was no longer a luxury, it was a necessity. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented history. In 1949, General Motors and the other companies were actually convicted of conspiring to monopolize the sale of buses and related products. They were fined $5,000, a slap on the wrist for reshaping the entire American landscape. And the effects of their decisions are still with you today. Every time you fill up your gas tank, every time you sit in traffic, every time you realize there is simply no other way to get where you need to go. Now, if destroying public transit was the first step in making you dependent on cars, the second step was even more insidious, making sure you would finance them. In the early days of the automobile industry, cars were purchased outright. If you wanted a car, you saved up and bought one. But as cars became more expensive and more essential, a new industry emerged: auto financing. And this is where the real money is made. You see, car manufacturers realize something important. The profit margin on selling a car is relatively thin, often just a few $100s after all costs are accounted for. But the profit margin on financing that car is enormous. When you take out a 5-year loan at 6% interest on a $30,000 car, you do not pay $30,000. You pay closer to $34,000. That extra $4,000 goes straight to the lender, which in many cases is a financial arm of the car manufacturer itself. General Motors has GMAC, Ford has Ford Motor Credit, Toyota has Toyota Financial Services. These companies do not exist to help you afford a car. They exist to extract maximum value from your need for transportation. And the methods they use to do this are sophisticated, psychologically calibrated, and almost invisible to the average buyer. Walk into any dealership and watch how the conversation unfolds. The salesperson will ask you one question above all others: what monthly payment are you comfortable with? This seems like a reasonable question. After all, your budget is based on monthly cash flow, not lump sums. But this question is a trap, and it is set deliberately. When you negotiate based on monthly payments, you lose track of the total cost. The dealer can extend your loan term from 4 years to 6 years, and suddenly that $300 payment becomes affordable, even though you are now paying tens of thousands more over the life of the loan. They can roll your negative equity from your trade-in into the new loan, burying your previous mistake inside your current one. They can add fees and extras and extended warranties that balloon the price while barely moving the monthly number. The entire negotiation is designed to focus your attention on the wrong metric. And most people never realize it because they were never taught to look at it any other way. And then there is the question of depreciation, the silent killer of automotive wealth. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses somewhere between 10 and 20% of its value. By the end of the first year, that $30,000 car is worth maybe $25,000. By year 5, it might be worth $12,000. You have not crashed it. You have not abused it. You have simply owned it, and ownership itself has cost you $18,000 in lost value. Now add the interest you paid on the loan, add the insurance premiums, which are higher for newer, more expensive vehicles, add the maintenance, the registration fees, the property taxes that some states charge on vehicles. By the time you finish paying for that car, you might have spent $50,000 on an asset that is now worth $8,000. And here is the question no one asks. What if you had done something different with that money? Let's do some simple math, the kind they never teach you in school. Suppose instead of buying a $30,000 car on a 5-year loan, you bought a reliable used car for $10,000 in cash. You have just freed up $20,000. Now suppose you invested that $20,000 in a simple index fund that returns an average of 8% per year, which is roughly the historical average of the stock market. In 10 years, that $20,000 becomes $43,000. In 20 years, it becomes $93,000. In 30 years, it becomes $200,000. That is the true cost of your car decision. Not just the money you spent, but the money you will never have because you spent it. Economists call this opportunity cost, and it is one of the most important concepts in personal finance, a concept that is conspicuously absent from most American education. And this is not an accident. You see, the same forces that benefit from your car purchases also benefit from your financial ignorance. Banks profit when you take out loans. Dealers profit when you finance through them. Insurance companies profit when you buy more coverage than you need. The entire automotive financial complex is built on the assumption that you will not do this math, that you will not understand opportunity cost, that you will focus on the monthly payment and ignore the lifetime cost. And why would you understand it? No one ever taught you. Your school curriculum, as we discussed in previous videos, was designed over a century ago by people who wanted to produce compliant workers, not financially sophisticated citizens. The Rockefellers and Carnegies who funded the General Education Board were not interested in teaching you how to build wealth. They were interested in teaching you how to show up on time and follow instructions. Financial literacy was never part of the plan because financially literate people are hard to exploit. But let us move beyond history and systems for a moment. Let us talk about psychology, because the automotive industry does not just exploit your ignorance, it exploits your emotions. Think about every car commercial you have ever seen. They do not show you spreadsheets and interest calculations. They show you freedom, adventure, status, sex. A man driving through empty mountain roads, wind in his hair, not another car in sight. A woman pulling up to a glamorous event, heads turning as she steps out. These images are not selling transportation. They are selling identity. They are selling the promise that this car will make you more attractive, more successful, more alive. And this works because human beings are not purely rational creatures. We are social animals who care deeply about status and belonging. When your neighbour buys a new truck, something in your brain registers that as a signal about their success, and by comparison, your own position. When your co-worker shows up in a luxury sedan, you feel it, whether you admit it or not. The car you drive becomes a statement about who you are, or at least who you want others to think you are, and the industry knows this. They spend billions of dollars on advertising designed specifically to activate these emotional triggers, to make you feel that your current car is inadequate, that you deserve better, that the path to happiness runs through the dealership lot. And then there is the question of instant gratification, the psychological bias that might be the most expensive of all. Human brains are wired to prefer rewards now over rewards later. This made sense for our ancestors, who lived in uncertain environments where tomorrow was never guaranteed. But in the modern financial world, this bias is catastrophic. When you choose a new car over an investment account, you are choosing visible, immediate pleasure over invisible, future security. The car is tangible. You can see it, touch it, smell that new car smell. The investment account is just numbers on a screen, abstract and distant. But those numbers grow while the car decays. Those numbers work for you while you sleep. Those numbers are building your freedom while the car is consuming it. The dealership is counting on your brain's preference for the immediate. They are counting on your inability to emotionally connect with your future self, the person who will be 65 years old and either financially secure or still working because the money is gone. Now, I want to be very clear about something. This is not an argument that you should never buy a car. As I said at the beginning, transportation is a necessity for most Americans. The question is not whether to have a car, but how to think about that car and what role it should play in your financial life. And here is where we need to challenge some conventional wisdom, because the advice you have been given is often wrong, designed to benefit the advisor more than you. Take PCP financing, for example, which has become increasingly popular in recent years. PCP stands for Personal Contract Purchase, and on the surface, it seems attractive. Your monthly payments are lower than a traditional loan. At the end of the contract, you can either pay a balloon payment to own the car, return it, or trade it in for a new one. Dealers love to push PCP because it makes expensive cars seem affordable. That BMW you could never justify suddenly looks manageable at $400 a month. But here is what they do not emphasize. With PCP, you're essentially renting the car while taking on all the responsibilities of ownership. You pay for insurance, maintenance, and repairs. You're limited in how many miles you can drive. If you exceed the limit or return the car with excess wear, you pay penalties, and at the end of the contract, you have no equity. You either pay the balloon and finally own a depreciated asset, or you walk away with nothing and start the cycle over again. PCP is not designed to help you build wealth. It is designed to keep you in a perpetual cycle of payments, always driving a car you do not own, always dependent on the next contract. The dealer wins, the finance company wins, you stay exactly where you are. But here is the contrarian thought that might actually change your life. What if you simply refuse to play this game? What if you rejected the entire premise that your car needs to be new, needs to be financed, needs to signal your status to the world? The wealthiest people in America, the ones who actually have money rather than just the appearance of money, often drive modest cars. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in history, drove an old Lincoln Town car for years before switching to a Cadillac, which he keeps for nearly a decade. Mark Zuckerberg has been photographed driving an Acura TSX, a car that costs a fraction of what he could afford. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, drove an old Ford F-150 pickup truck until the day he died. These are people who understand something that most car buyers do not. A car is a tool, not a trophy. Its value lies in what it does, not what it says, and every dollar you spend trying to impress people is a dollar that is not working for your future. Let me tell you about someone I know. A few years back, he was in the same position most people find themselves in after college. Decent job, modest salary, watching everyone around him upgrade their vehicles. The pressure was real. Co-workers showing up in financed SUVs, talking about their monthly payments like they were badges of honor. He wanted to fit in. He almost did. But instead, he bought a used Honda Civic for $6,000. It was not glamorous. It did not turn heads. But it ran reliably for the next 8 years. During those 8 years, while his co-workers cycled through 2 or 3 financed vehicles, each time rolling over negative equity into the next loan, he put the difference into investments. By the time that Civic finally needed replacing, his investment account had grown enough to buy a decent used car outright, with money left over. And more importantly, he had broken the cycle. He had learned to see cars differently, not as status symbols, but as depreciating tools that should consume as little of his wealth as possible. This is not a story about deprivation. It is a story about choice, about understanding the game well enough to play it on your own terms. So what is the actual lesson here? What should you do if you need a car, which most of you do? Let me translate everything we have discussed into something actionable. First, separate transportation from identity. Your car does not define your worth. Your net worth defines your worth. The person driving the 10-year-old Toyota who has 6 figures invested is in a better position than the person driving the new Mercedes who has 6 figures in debt. Train yourself to see through the marketing, to recognize that the emotional appeal of a new car is manufactured, designed by people who profit from your psychological vulnerabilities. Second, buy used, and buy with cash if at all possible. Let someone else pay for the steepest part of the depreciation curve. A 3-year-old car with reasonable mileage will often serve you just as well as a new one at half the price. And when you pay cash, you feel the money leaving. You make better decisions when the pain is immediate rather than spread across 60 monthly payments. Third, if you must finance, negotiate the total price, not the monthly payment. Know exactly what the car costs, what the interest rate is, and what you will pay over the life of the loan. Do the math yourself before you walk into the dealership. Do not let them structure the deal to obscure the true cost. Fourth, consider cars as a percentage of your net worth, not your income. The common advice is to spend no more than 10 to 15% of your annual income on a car. But income can disappear. Net worth is what you actually have. A better rule might be to never have more than 5% of your net worth tied up in vehicles, which are depreciating assets that consume rather than produce. Fifth, and most importantly, always calculate opportunity cost. Before you spend money on a car, ask yourself, what else could this money do for me? What would it be worth in 10 years if invested? What would it be worth in 30? The car is never just the car. It is always also the future that money could have built. But I want to end with something deeper than tactics. Because this video, like all the others on this channel, is not really about cars. It is about freedom. The system you live in is designed to capture your income through a series of traps that look like normal life. The car payment is one trap. The mortgage you cannot afford is another. The credit cards, the lifestyle inflation, the constant upgrade cycle that keeps you on the treadmill, working for money that disappears before it can work for you. Every one of these traps was built by someone who profits from your participation. And the way out is not to work harder within the trap. The way out is to see the trap for what it is and refuse to step into it. When you buy a car that consumes 20% of your income, you are not just buying transportation, you are buying bondage. You are committing your future labour to pay for a past decision. You're trading your freedom for the temporary feeling of success. And here is the question I want to leave you with. When you imagine your life 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what do you see? Do you see yourself still making payments, still caught in the cycle, still working for things that have already lost their value? Or do you see something different? Financial security, options, the ability to walk away from a job you hate, to take a risk on something you love, to spend your time as you choose rather than as you must. The path to that freedom is paved with 1,000 small decisions, and the car you drive is one of the biggest. It is also one of the most visible, which is why it is so psychologically difficult. Choosing the modest car means appearing less successful to people who do not understand the game. It means having the discipline to care more about your actual wealth than your apparent wealth. It means playing the long game in a culture that worships the immediate. And if you are honest with yourself, you might realize that the desire for the nice car was never really about transportation at all. It was about being seen, about being respected, about proving something to the people around you, or maybe to yourself. But here is the truth that advertising will never tell you. The people you are trying to impress are not thinking about you nearly as much as you imagine. They're too busy worrying about their own car payments, their own status anxieties, their own attempts to appear successful. The whole game is a collective hallucination, everyone performing for everyone else, nobody actually winning. The only way to win is to stop playing, to define success for yourself by your own standards, measured in freedom and options rather than horsepower and leather seats. The choice is yours, but whatever you choose, at least now you understand what you're choosing between.